Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lloyd Day. I'm the Deputy Director General of ICA, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture. Welcome to the home of Sustainable Agriculture of the Americas. This is our second year at the COP, and we're delighted to partner with BCIU, and we thank its President and CEO, Mr. Peter Tuchansky, I hope I pronounced that correctly, for his support of the pavilion and his leadership in developing this great panel and all the great panel. We have a number of ministers and celebrities here, so we're absolutely honored to have you all with us. I'm honored to be here with more than two, but on the stage we have two of ICA's board of directors, both of whom are very important reasons of why we are here today. Secretary Tom Vilsack of the United States and Secretary Victor Villalobos of Mexico. When Victor Villalobos was ICA's Director General, Tom Vilsack was Secretary of Agriculture in the Obama administration. I'm gonna go for a walk down memory lane. As the governments and ICA administrations transition, the work continued, and these gentlemen wore different hats. Secretary Vilsack became the CEO of the U.S. Dairy Export Council, and Secretary Villalobos went on to the campaign and now is in the end of his fifth year, about to begin his sixth year as Secretary of Agriculture of Mexico. During this period, due to a lot of the work, one more to go. During this period, due to a lot of the work ICA did with the private sector in international standard-setting bodies like Codex, WOA, the OIE, the WTO, etc., ICA stepped up its collaboration, and the U.S. Dairy Export Council was a key and critical supporter of what we were doing internationally. At the time you were there, Secretary, and we thank you very much for everything that you're doing and that you did with USDEC and also with the USDA. As you remember, we did a lot of preparation during a time of COVID for the UN Food System Summit that Dr. Kalibata, who's with us, was in charge of, and thank you very much for being here. And that was a very important time in the history of ICA where we all worked together to have a consensus position from the ministers of agriculture to deliver to the UN Food System Summit and help, we think, improve the narrative of that summit, in which we had three fundamental principles. First, that farmers must be a part of the discussions. As the head of the World Farmers Organization, I'd like to take credit for this quote. He did, and I don't think it's his either. But if you're not at the table, you might be on the menu. So farmers first. Science must be the foundation for any public policy in governments or in international standard-setting organizations. And finally, that agriculture should be viewed as part of the solution to our climate challenges. So thank you very much to our distinguished guests, and thank you very much to Peter at BCIU for bringing all these great panelists together. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. When we were launched in the White House as an international educational business-led ecosystem by President Eisenhower, what he was thinking at the time was, while there may be differences of opinion or in some respects angst about U.S. foreign policy, that the people-to-people, private-to-private nexus was going to be a key to solving global society challenges. And I and my team at the Business Council for International Understanding, which is headquartered in New York, is dedicated to helping the policy world, but also the private sector, including the farmers, find last mile challenges and overcoming last mile challenges. So an illustration of this is the wonderful relationship that's developed over time with BCIU and Bayer. And regardless of what you might have thought about any one of these large companies in the past, I think looking forward, you have to recognize all of us recognize that there's a desire to solve problems, to not just regulation or, many folks I think believe weaken regulation. That hasn't been our observation, particularly in the last several years, where there are so many fine global companies that are eager to share their know-how, their data, and to work with the policy world to connect farmers to markets, process to address the challenge of climate change. So it's an honor to be here with this multi-stakeholder group. Grateful to IACA for its partnership, for Lloyd Day and Margaret Ziegler's deep partnership with our colleagues at BCIU. And over the next hour, we're going to hear first from Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack, an extraordinary public servant who had the courage to go to his constituents multiple times to ask for a vote, which takes a thick skin and a belief in leading a purpose-filled life, which I think he and Secretary Villalobos are exemplars in that regard. So may I first invite Secretary Vilsack to the podium.
Well, thank you very, very much, and appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I will tell you that it is indeed a fairly distinguished group of ministers, secretaries that you put together. I think if you combine all of our agricultural might here, you would have a fairly significant percentage of agricultural production worldwide. So it's a very impressive opportunity to be here. And I want to express my personal appreciation to IACA and the BCIU for bringing this group together. It's critical that we continue to ensure that agriculture has a voice at COP, and I'm very pleased to be on the dais with my good friend, Secretary Villalobos. We've had a very good personal relationship during the time that he has been secretary, and we go back a ways. We're certainly fortunate to have IACA fostering these collaborations and partnerships as we tackle some of the most pressing shared challenges, from African swine fever to pest management in the Caribbean, to putting science-based food standards to strengthen the health of our soils. All of us here, I think, recognize that joint international action is absolutely critical and key to helping agriculture address the causes and consequences of a changing climate. IACA's initiatives on improving the Western Hemisphere's soil health and integrated management and efficient use of water, I believe, will further contribute to achieving more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable development, even despite the severe impact of a changing climate. Our hemisphere must continue to lead the way, not just for the hemisphere, but for the globe, with innovation and sustainable approaches that offer solutions to the climate challenges agriculture faces. And we're going to do this through capacity building and by ensuring agriculture is part of a multilateral policy discussion and negotiations like what is currently taking place at COP28. And I should say that I'm very pleased that we have seen at this COP the food integration that the UAE has led, now nearly 150 countries signing on to it. My partner in Aim for Climate, which I'm going to discuss in just a second, Minister Al-Mahiri, is very much personally responsible for the development of that declaration, and I think it's a good deliverable for this COP. At this year's Inter-American Board of Agriculture, IACA member states came together to request the Director General promote agriculture sector's access to all types of climate financing, including private financing, as well as options such as voluntary carbon markets, green funds, and guarantees. So I'd like to highlight three collaborative efforts through which we're making, I think, major inroads in terms of our shared goals. The first is, as I mentioned, the Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, Aim for C, which continues to accelerate investment and innovation in climate-smart agriculture and food system transformation. We started out with a small number of members at COP26. At this COP, we announced over 600 partners who have invested and will invest $17 billion and counting in over 78 sprint innovation efforts. So we're excited about the progress that's being made in climate-smart agriculture and food system transformation. We hosted this year the Aim for Climate Summit, where we welcomed IECA and global partners who all recommitted to collaborating on climate solutions in the Western Hemisphere and worldwide. Another joint effort that we're involved in is the Sustainable Productivity Growth Coalition, which Victor and I agree is absolutely essential with a focus on productivity. This serves as a platform for sharing best practices to address climate changes and global food insecurity. I mean, the reality is we're not going to be able to address global food insecurity and nutrition insecurity without increased productivity. We also need to figure out ways in which, while doing so, we can boost farmer income, both large and small. And I'm delighted that IECA is an active member of the SPG coalition, as well as many countries in Latin America. The third area is the Global Methane Challenge, a collective effort to reduce global methane emissions by at least 30% by 2030, which I think is absolutely critical and essential for the health of our livestock industry. Over 24 IECA countries have already signed on, and I strongly encourage others to join the effort. Now, all of these initiatives and coalitions allow us to work together across our borders to meet our climate challenges and to support sustained regional growth. Regarding cross-border cooperation, I want to highlight some of the United States' climate-smart agricultural work and underscore our commitment to share lessons learned and results with our international partners. Through our Partnership for Climate-Smart Commodities, we're developing a third category of commodity, a climate-smart commodity. We're investing nearly $3 billion in 141 projects nationwide involving every major commodity and livestock operation. Nearly 170 climate-smart practices are going to be incented over what we hope to be nearly 25 million acres of farmland in the U.S. We hope to not only provide resources to farmers to embrace climate-smart practices, but we also want to create new market opportunities and revenue streams for producers who use those climate-smart practices. Our climate-smart projects focus on innovation and cost-effective ways to measure, monitor, report, and verify greenhouse gas emission reductions and carbon sequestration benefits. We want to make sure that the knowledge and the tools that result from our efforts and investments are not just accessible to our farmers, but also to our partners around the world. For that purpose, we established the International Climate Hub, and I just got finished showcasing that at another event, where I hope we will allow folks to learn more about this at the U.S. Center, or by going online and taking a look at the International Climate Hub website. This basically provides farmers the ability to know more about their soil, specifically down to the specific farmstead, and then the conservation practices that would be most beneficial for that soil type. We also think trade policies and environmental objectives must be mutually reinforcing, meaning that we must stand together in support of science and evidence-based approaches that will encourage the continued development of innovative tools and technologies that support a sustainable and resilient agricultural sector. We see positive shifts as countries in the Americas adopt more forward-leaning regulations that facilitate trade and innovation, and embrace a variety of proven tools, including agricultural biotechnology that can contribute to climate resiliency, increased productivity, and greater food security. With Brazil expected to host COP30 just 2 years from now, that may seem like a long time, Minister, but it's going to go by very quickly. This is the time for countries throughout the Americas to come together and to reinforce our shared commitment to sustainable, climate-smart, and a food-secure future. We talk a lot about climate-smart practices, we talk a lot about technologies, but I think it's important for us to always recognize that behind every one of those technologies and any discussion about those technologies, there are farmers, everywhere around the world. And we want to make sure that we don't forget that these tools are for he or she to be able to be more productive, regardless of where they farm or ranch or produce. So with that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to hearing from Victor.
Minister, the U.S. and Mexico, I can't think of two countries that are more interdependent, and we are with each other for the centuries to come. And some of the leadership you've shown has really, I think, encouraged all of us to realize that a partnership of equals like this is really got to continue to evolve, and you've been an important figure in that dialogue, and your partnership with Secretary Vilsack as well. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you, sir.
Hello to everyone. I am very pleased to have the opportunity to share with you this future of the humanity. Despite the volumes of food currently being produced worldwide, the shadow of global famine continues to threaten the world. We have emphasized the importance of changing current paradigms, and it is essential to take concrete actions to reduce and mitigate the impacts of climate change, and to take the opportunity to invest, to build a new infrastructure to develop agriculture innovations for the adaptation of food production systems, and to be able to produce and provide healthy food, nutritious, and food for all the growing population. In other words, food for all. Public-private partnership will be a very important and achieve joint ventures to bring the most brilliant minds and resources to create the new structure of being innovative solutions to these important challenges. Face the ongoing of agriculture workers, aging, and bring the young people and women to the agriculture systems to develop scientific research practices for climate-smart agriculture. In addition to increasing food production, the world's population faces the challenge of providing post-harvest losses for food waste. The resources invested in production of food are lost in the logical process of interdifferentiated and in the distribution phase or damage of this causing food waste, representing more than 30% of the resources being originated, inverted in this production. So it is not longer possible to continue on this self-destructive spiral of availability of food worldwide. It is very important that decisions regarding climate finance, agriculture production are oriented towards efficient strategies for capacity building of the agriculture innovation to face climate change that enhance the risk of pests and diseases, extreme temperatures, and alterations in rain cycles in agriculture, rainforests, and also production systems, especially in the poorest regions of the world. The commitment to bring agriculture to food systems to the forefront of the discussions and the activity negotiations and decision taking in the COP28 regarding climate finances represents a light of hope in this coming future. The United Arab Emirates Declaration of Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems, and Climate Actions has so far received 134 endorsements from heads of state and governments. Now, it will be fundamental to take concrete steps and move from words to actions. It will be Her Excellency Miriam bin Mohammed, the Minister of Climate Change and Environment in the United Arab Emirates, mentioned that with these countries on board, the cover of together, we cover more than 5.7 billion people and 70 of the food produced and the food that we consume. The signatures of the declaration are more than nearly 500 million farmers and represents the 75% of the emissions from the global food system. The partnership will focus on agricultural research and development and is emphasize and scaling up innovation, which is so necessary to adapt food systems to the growing threat of the climate change. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, together with the United Arab Emirates, will fund a total of $200 million to new investments in food and agricultural research and innovation. With the majority of this investment focusing in the CGIAR network, the United Arab Emirates becomes the core partner of the CG System Council and support the world. To finalize, I would like to mention that Mexico is very proud to be the host country of the International Center devoted to research, preservation, and diversification of corn and wheat germplasm to the new generations. I'm talking about the International Center for Maize and Wheat, the CIMMYT. And to conclude, I would like to reiterate and express how important it is to continue working in our sector and bring the new paradigms in order to guarantee food security and also to do it in a respectable way for the environment. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you both. Why don't we turn now to the panel that represents the policy and business world, which will be moderated by Danny Nierenberg. And Danny, you've really pulled together not only the global connectivity of the key stakeholders, but you yourselves have been great in campaigning for positive change. And I think that's the sort of vision and purpose that we aspire to at BCIU as well. I want to thank again our partners at IECA and our colleagues at Bayer and our agricultural lead at our organization, Joe Walters, for making this happen. So over to you, Danny. Microphone.
I think we're ready to go. I want to thank the wonderful panelists who were before us. Both secretaries did a wonderful job of really framing this conversation. If I could invite our panelists to join me on stage, that would be wonderful. Qinjiang Zhang, Bruno Pazzi, Dr. Agnes Calabata, and Mercio Rodriguez. Thank you all for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment as they join the stage. and get all mic'd up. Wonderful to see so many people in this room enjoying these conversations and learning what's happening at COP28 this year on the food and agriculture front and making sure that sustainable agriculture is at the forefront. It is your time. Thank you so much for joining. So as our final panelists get mic'd up, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Danny Nierenberg. I am president and co-founder of Food Tank, which is a research and advocacy organization I co-founded with my business partner, Bernard Pollock. I'm really excited to introduce this panel, which will talk about ways to cultivate change in our agri-food systems in a really positive way. And so I'm going to give my seat up to Dr. Kalibata. Please. Nope, you got it. All right, so let me go ahead now and introduce everyone. All right, we have Qingcheng Zhang, the Senior Director of Agriculture, Food, Nature, and Rural Development at the Asian Development Bank. Thank you so much for joining us. Round of applause. Let's keep the energy up as we get going, please. Thank you. We have Bruno Pazzi, who's the Deputy Director of the Ecosystems Division at the UN Environment Program. Hi, thank you so much for being here. Round of applause.
Give myself a clap.
Renata Miranda, who is the Secretary of Innovation, Sustainable Development, Irrigation, and Cooperatives in the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock for the Government of the Federative Republic of Brazil.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Woohoo!
Sorry for all the technical. Great. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. So Agnes Kalibata, the president of AGRA, thank you for joining. And we have Mauricio Rodriguez, who is the president of Latin American Crop Science for Bayer. So a big round of applause for everyone for joining us today. Thank you. Let's keep this energy up. So we learned so much from Secretaries of Agriculture Villalobos and Secretary Vilsack. And so I want to kind of continue that discussion with a kind of simple question for you all, if I can. And that is, how can regenerative agriculture practices contribute to addressing the challenges of both food security and the climate crisis we're facing? And Dr. Kalibata, I'd love to start with you, because I think the UN Food Systems Summit and the stock taking moment earlier this year really represented an opportunity to highlight regenerative agriculture practices, especially on the African continent.
So let me start by, again, having been the UN Food System Special Envoy, let me start by really congratulating everyone for the work we've done on the UAE declaration, right? 150 countries is not an easy feat, and I know that you all have been working very hard to get that work done. On the road to Can you hear me now? Yes. I was saying on the road to Brazil, that's huge excitement coming from us. Now we found a new word, the foodies of this world that are looking to really see how the food system can move forward. Now, specifically on some of the technologies that are coming through, regenerative agriculture is becoming one of the most important technologies. And again, if you live in Kenya like I do, and you've lived through 6 failed crop seasons, you do understand that there are things we need to work on. We need to improve soil carbon. And soil carbon does one marvelous thing. It improves water holding capacity in the soil. So one thing we've learned through the work we are doing in Kenya, in these areas, marginal areas where rain comes once in a while, doing regenerative agriculture is helping farmers hold water in the soil longer, because soil carbon is improving, water holding capacity is improving. So even us who didn't have the belief in regenerative agriculture, as I might say, are beginning to see, okay, this is something that can bridge the time between when the farmer is waiting for the next rain to come, two weeks usually, before the crop really goes dry. So this is something that we are beginning to see. I think the most important part of this is where is the technologies that help farmers understand what carbon means and how to benefit from carbon, but also where is the community that helps build this ecosystem. It takes about 4 years for the farmer to build that soil to the capability that it needs to be at. How, in that time, what's the system around the farm? And I'm happy to say that this week, actually, at the beginning, on the 2nd, with ICA, we are now part of what we are calling the technical collaborative cooperation that does recognize that many institutions need to be coming together to support countries and farmers to come up with mechanisms of surviving that period of escalation. But here is the most critical thing for regenerative agriculture, because Bayer is a partner, and there are also other businesses, and BCIU is really an institution that is moving these things forward. We need to build a relationship with businesses. I heard the Honorable Secretary Vilsack talk about sustainable production growth. We need to ensure that I don't care if businesses are doing it for sustainability purposes. I just want to make sure that there's a link to farmers. If it costs you, if sustainability is the incentive you need to connect with some of the farmers you've not connected with before, please let's do it, but bring these farmers in the ecosystem. Part of what we do as AGRA is to ensure that we support you on that farmer side of ecosystem. So working with Bayer, but also working with other businesses that offtake from farmers would like to understand how regenerative agriculture can be a good incentive for building the soil, rebuilding the ecosystem, but also advancing farmers. So businesses that are interested in that, as we are seeing in the US, where businesses are actually beginning to buy from farmers who are doing regenerative agriculture as preferential buyers. We want to be part of that ecosystem. And I see One Acre Fund here who works in Africa as well as us, and we want to make sure that farmers in Africa can be part of this ecosystem. So any opportunity for that, we are very much excited while we build strong evidence, strong cases to take food systems further at COP30 in Brazil.
Thank you so much, Dr. Calabato. Mauricio, Agnes has talked about this relationship that needs to be built between farmers and businesses and research centers. And I'm wondering if you can talk more about what that means for you as a company in instilling regenerative agriculture practices throughout your operations.
Good, thank you. So first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with such a nice group of people here and learn a little bit more about regenerative agriculture. But just since we talk so much about regenerative agriculture, our base concept is how can you produce more with less while restoring more. And based on that simple concept, I think the idea of connecting a lot of innovation, so we're an innovation company that is used to continue to produce and continue to bring new products to face. We want to ally this capacity for innovating on a regular basis with the digital transformation that we're going through. So what we've learned is that developing better solutions stands for how can you better ally good innovation products with much more data so that you can produce different solutions. And when we make sure that that is tied to having collaborations with both the government sector and some other parties in the whole stakeholder management piece, we actually have developed some programs. So in Brazil, some things like with Embrapa and some partnerships, a lot of partnerships focus on carbon projects and so on and so forth, that are pretty much focused on how can we leverage more of our data, how can we group with growers so that we can take more of this data and generate more solution and make sure that we're capturing this carbon footprint the better way possible. So the way we've been thinking as an organization is focus a mixture of innovation, digital information, collaboration, and partnership in a general world so that you can connect more the growers, government sectors, and take our piece as a private sector as well. So that is being primarily our focus, and I would say we have been going through this path for a few years. I would say over the last 2 to 3 years, the level of advancement has been quite significant.
Mauricio, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that data component, because that's really key to incentivize that collaboration and convince farmers to go ahead and practice regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, I can give you a practical example that we've been talking about, our Pro Carbono project that we have around the world, and let's focus on the one that we have in Brazil. We have been working with this for the last 3 to 4 seasons, partnering with 2,000 growers in Brazil. And that has been primarily focused on sharing and incentivizing agronomic practice, the ones that we use in Brazil, and how we incentivize like no-till, crop rotation, cover crops, and things like that. And we have been getting data from, let's say, more than 200,000 hectares in some sort of around 300,000 soil analysis over the last few years, which allowed us now to get to a point that we're going to a second phase where we establish what we're calling a kind of a footprint por carbono, where we pretty much can have a kind of a calculator that we can clearly say what is the footprint for carbono. And we pilot that in this last season with 10 of these growers, with roughly around 160,000 hectares, and in a way that we can proofly show what is the footprint and how can we prove that we have a low carbon footprint soybean in Brazil. This first result, which encourages a lot, this was a partnership with Embrapa, as I mentioned before, it was showing roughly more than 60% reduction in terms of the footprint just for this pilot test, which encourages us first that we have something that is solid, that can be scalable, and that has proof tests based on data that we're obtaining from the growers.
Thank you so much, Mauricio. That's really key for helping farmers adopt these practices, knowing that it actually works, right? Qingfeng, if I can turn to you, some of what Bruno's been talking about is that Mauricio has been talking about is the innovation that's required to change practices. That innovation requires investment. And from your perspective, what kind of investments are needed from ADB and others to really make regenerative agriculture possible?
Thank you so much, Chair. Probably let me start the background and the context of the Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is one of our audiences know, really is the home of the 50% of all the undernourished populations. The food insecurity is the increase. But sometimes Asia Pacific was facing tremendous challenging about impact of the climate change. And also Asia Pacific also contribute over 50% of the GHG emission. And also the agro-food system itself also low and sustainable farming now also contribute to the biodiversity loss. So because of the food crisis last year, ADB introduced a $14 billion food security package, basically cover the 2022 to 2025, focus on both short-term responses for social protection, enhances the purchase power for the farmers and also the community, but more importantly, focus on the long-term measures to build up the food system resilience. If you're talking about the long-term food system resilience promotes regenerative farming, we have the 3 takes. The first one, incentive, very, very critical. We were talking about a lot about the repurposing subsidy and also engaging the farmers. I think the incentive really gives the farmers the meaning to change their behavior, very critical. So that's why through the ADB investment, we have the policy-based lending and also the engagement with the regulatory reform with the government to introduce the payment for ecological services and the equal compensation scheme to change the farmers' behavior, establish sort of the green incentives to incentivize the farmers reduce fertilizer, chemicals, and also the sustainable farming. Of course, the PBR, we're talking about this, like the rice sector reform in Philippines this year. We approved over $500 million for this whole regulatory reform in the Philippines. Second one, from our investment, we saw is a holistic approach very, very essential. So that's why for this food system transformation, we're talking about combination of climate smart agriculture, digitalization of agricultural value chain, enhancing the efficiency, and also reduce the GHG emission along these agro infrastructures. And the third is the natural-based solutions, promote this regenerative farming. But lastly, I want to emphasize is sort of the engaged private sector. So, and also a number of our secretary also mentioned about how to measure the result is very critical. So just 2 weeks ago, Global Environmental Facility, IDB, we announced is the Natural Capital Fund. Natural Capital Fund, basically we say we need to address the food security, but same time we also need to produce more with the less, and also protect the natural capital. In that way, we have a sort of the natural capital lab and also natural capital fund and also agro-business platform. Combine them together. One is accounting the contribution benefit, contribute farmers for ecosystem services, but same time we have this fund as a branded financing to make our investment bankable and then engage the private sector. Lastly is a sort of a digital agro business platform, and we can trace the source of the product and also help the farmers sell the ecological product to the city consumers. Probably let me just post here. Of course, we have the knowledge platform for the conservation agriculture across the countries. We run the sort of the different knowledge sharing and so on and so forth. But again, we learn a lot from this COP28, but sometimes for the Asia Pacific thing, we can also share what we did learn from the last few years. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Qingfeng. Bruno, Qingfeng mentioned these nature-positive solutions and practices, and I'm wondering if you can talk more about how they work to address both the challenges of food insecurity and our climate crisis, and our health challenges, to be honest.
Yeah, indeed, and you put it rightly. We're talking indeed in this format about the climate challenge, but I mean, food systems is also a biodiversity challenge and a pollution challenge, as we know, and the way food systems will transform in the coming years to also become a climate positive force and a nature positive force is extremely important. Now, it will address the challenge of feeding the world, indeed, also by first looking at all the food waste that we produce. I mean, a lot of the food we produce actually goes to waste, and this is probably one of the first things that we need to look at. And then it will address this challenge by creating a better relation and a better productivity in relation to nature. Mm-hmm. So this is where nature positivity comes in. And if we can invest in looking, and you talked about, I think a lot of us already talked about the health of our soils. This is extremely important. If we invest in better health for our soils, we get the carbon challenge addressed in a way, but we also get the biodiversity challenge addressed. And this is really, then we're going to have a better productivity, and we're going to have a better relation with nature. We need to do more crop rotation. We need to invest more in agroforestry. We need to invest in new innovative ways that produce a new type of food, because we also need a new way of looking at our diets. So it's all of these all together that will create this nature positive look at agriculture, when agriculture will become not a force not a negative force towards nature, but a very positive force, and that's really where farmers are key. Educating with farmers, educating the farmers. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. So this is where also the relation that we're going to have with farmers, with those who have their hands on the ground and really producing the food for society, educating the farmers, getting them to understand these new ways of cultivating the land will be extremely positive. So it's a message of transformation and of hope, I think, that we have in front of us, and we need to raise to the challenge.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Bruno. And really, all of you have talked about a holistic approach. So Renata, If I can sort of dig into specifics for you about how regenerative agriculture practices will help both farmers and ranchers in Brazil.
Let's try. No? Okay. First of all, good morning to everybody. I would like to bring two highlights first. First, the presence of Dr. Hatan Lau here. Thank you very much for your presence. It's an honor. The second one, congratulations to IICA. I don't know if everybody realizes the importance of IICA, but this is the main important institution in the whole America. We are the only continent that goes through the extreme south until the extreme north. So we know exactly what means climate change in any kind of climate situation. And we have developed countries, developing countries. We have similar stories with colonization, slavery. So we are a very singular continent. IICA is the most important institution which brings bridge and union to everybody. So congratulations for all of this. Coming back to the question. Great question. Thank you for this. It's important to say that Brazil has a long experience regarding regenerative agriculture because, not because we are using this expression now, but because we faced since ever so many challenges, the climatic challenges, that we had to bring this kind of technology 50 years ago. So we need 2 points. We say that we need 2 pillars to implement regenerative agriculture. We need politics, of course, strategy. You need goals, plans, and you need investment, of course. Right. You need to make the machine works. So for strategy, in Brazil, we have 3 main policies. We have ABC plan, that's a low carbon agriculture plan. We have Prona Solos, that's a program for soils, not only chemical, physical, but also biological. And we have our master, our guru here that teaches about soil. And the third one is very important. We have a program, a national program for bioinputs. We are changing our matrix, and we say there we have 50% of increasing on using bioinputs per year, and we believe that we are going to have 15% of the market of all the agro-defensives in 25. 15% is going to be only bioinputs. It's a great change. And we do it, you told, to have this kind of changing, we need money. Right. Of course, we need investment. 30% of all the harvest investment that we need in Brazil, it's public budget, 30%. The rest of this, it's private investment. Right. And if you want to have it along the time, you need to scale up the successful cases, you need to bring it inside to the business model. So the environment aspects has to be part of the business model. That's the only way. Besides this, there is no chance for the future.
Thank you so much, Renata. I want to turn the conversation to a little bit about what we've already talked about, which is innovation and technology and how we get that to farmers. So Dr. Calabada, what I'm interested in especially is the combination of high and low technologies. We've seen that work really well with indigenous knowledge, cultural knowledge, and then, precision agriculture, other types of technologies. Can you talk a little bit more about how we can move that forward? What kind of investment is needed for that combo of high and low?
Good. Can you hear me? Good. Listen, we already have, you want me to use the, okay. We have a lot of technologies sitting in our midst. In terms of moving efficiencies forward, nearly every 1 in 2 African farmers, for example, have a mobile telephone that is now becoming smart in near every village. So we could make sure that information is getting to these farmers faster and more efficiently so that they can make decisions of the day. we have the ability to use technologies to strengthen resilience of farmers. So look at, I mean, part of what we do is ensure that, and Brazil is a guru in this, and we've worked with them, Embrapa especially in West Africa, on getting seeds, improved seeds to farmers, and Bayer does that. We could do so much more of that and strengthen resilience. Now, the last one, which I think is extremely important where we are going, is the whole carbon environment and data. We need to find tools, and they are there. Regenerative agriculture farmers need these tools. They need to be able to monitor the amount of carbon they are investing in the soil so that they are able to get results from that. We need to make sure that low carbon emissions, we have tools that can monitor low carbon emissions, because these things cost so much money in terms of investments, but they are also there. But the most important part of this whole ecosystem is how we build a data system that allows farms to connect to the business ecosystem that is looking to move forward this whole carbon environment. And there's a lot of people that are looking to purchase carbon credits from farmers. There are lots of people that are trying to reduce the amount of carbon in the environment. And the other day I actually had a fantastic example that is happening in the livestock sector in Brazil in terms of how we start going into low carbon livestock. For me, what these things mean is that there's hope for farmers who have designed a way of life and livelihood that they understand, and we are asking them to move away from what they know, but we really can also innovate around what they know, and technologies are already becoming available, and these technologies are data-driven. So being able to invest in data at the farm level, at the ecosystem level, and the national level to ensure that, especially for smallholder farmers, there's a data ecosystem that allows them to be part of the science, the evidence that is around them, but also the business ecosystem that they can tap into. So these opportunities are already there. We just have to start scaling them. That's why I'm excited that AIMS for C, which many of us are now part of, is moving from innovations to scaling innovations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's do that. And again, I really love the partnership we have with ICA, because this is the opportunity we have to tap into what's happening in the Americas, not just in the US that I said before, but also the work, what is happening in Brazil, in Uruguay, and many of you that really have amazing production technologies and soil building technologies that we can start tapping into.
Thank you so much. Mauricio, Agnes talked about this idea of making sure that farmers have access to technology. I wonder if you can talk more about the participatory research and development with farmers that's needed from the private sector.
Oh, that's interesting. So thinking about how do we share this with our growers? I think we try to factor that into two pieces. So first of all, having the innovation in place, so investing more than €2.5 billion per year as an organization to develop new program, both in terms of innovation, basic product solutions, and investing in digital transformation, I think it's key. So how do we accelerate the amount of innovation that we generate? I think that continues to be key in order to move that forward. The second piece is having access this to big growers. It's probably easier because you have access, you have direct access, you have the way to get there. But I think what we try to add to our pledge is getting to until 2030 to 100 million smallholders, which I think it's the key aspect to changing that dynamics. And we have reached roughly around 50% of that. And the main focus is certainly Africa, India, and so on, but we also have an interesting footprint in Latin America as well. And I would say most of these is using, so they use a lot of technology. Many of them either through self-sold or adapting the technology in order to reach to this smallholder. I think it's key. We also use a lot of what we call better life farming, which is getting these stores closer to them so that you can get the education, so that you get the access in terms of funding. The third thing is how do we get partnerships? Because getting access to technology many times, especially when we look into Latin America, I would assume the same for Africa and so on, is having funding access. So how do we partner with banks, with tradings, and so on? So we're actually leveraging a lot of this. So how do we get our technologies, and more than that, adapt the access to these smallholders to make it as easier as possible, and also get the focus and get the adequate partnership, because we know we're part of the solution. We need to combine that. Otherwise, you just get with the products, and that's not enough for them. So the funding piece, how do you train that in terms of logistics and so on and so forth? I think that's what we're trying to do as an organization.
Sure. Renata, Mauricio has talked about this access problem. What are the barriers to for farmers and ranchers to get technology in Brazil?
It's a huge country, so of course it's amazing. When we talk about larger producers, is not a problem. Of course, they have access of technologies and technical assistance, but we are talking about we have 5 million farmers, and 7% is smallholders. So when we talk about that, we are talking about the challenge of technical assistance to everybody. As you told, of course, we have mobile phones, we have part of Brazil, we have connectivity, and we have a lot of information, but it's so difficult to share it with them. So the first one, technical assistance, the second one, credit, of course, investment.
Always comes back to credit and investment, doesn't it, Xingfeng?
So this,
I think you're
can you
good.
hear me?
Uh-huh.
So probably I take one example. We invest in the Mongolia. So for agricultural transformation, livestock is one of the key, elephant in the room we need to think about. In Mongolia, we have this 2.7 population, but essentially we have 65 million livestock. And then Mongolia is very much, the livelihood is very much dependent on the livestock. So when we're talking about the future of the food and also food system transformation in Mongolia, we really need to collect the how we can transform the livestock sector and also help the farmers and also agribusiness to sell their cashmere after their process. So I want to quickly share 3 takes from our investment in that sector and how we can also capitalize the carbon financing. Number one is we work together with Stanford University and NASA have introduced this remote sensing and also the monitor change of the rangeland to see what the soil change and also the ecosystem services improve. And in that sense, we can give the guidance to the livestock sector and also the small business. Second, we through our FI loan, financial intermediary loan, we provide this. The first phase is this $36 million US. Right, we have this second phase already $50 million US through the commercial bank, support the SME for this sustainable cashmere product. So again, if you want to sell the cashmere to a European market, you better have good certifications, where the sources come from, or how you support the electrocapture, and so forth. So we need to help them standardize the process, marketing their product, and also get the certifications. So the whole process, grading the cashmere products through this electrocapture fund is one of the entry points. Lastly, because we introduced the climate resilient livestock process, we work together with the GCF, Global Climate Fund, to help capitalize their CO2 emission reduced by one of these interventions. So again, lastly, I want to quickly share is in Asia Pacific, basically we involve with the small farmers. If you want to scale up, you need to have the innovative way to organize them. So again, a different modality is needed. We cannot just say, hey, we lend the money to one of the farmers, $2,000 US, and then you want to talk about the 1 billion investment. It's not possible. And of course, right now we have the digital technology. We need to enhance, harvest the type of the advantages. Let me just pause here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bruno, that leads me to a question for you, because Xingfeng's been talking about farmers need to be organized in a way where they can make these decisions and benefit the environment, benefit their local economies. I'm wondering from a UNEP perspective, what are the best practices to make sure that technology is actually benefiting farmers who are working in fields every day?
Well, when it comes to innovation, one of the things that we've been advocating, and we published actually a report in 2021, if I'm not wrong about that, is how can we rechannel a number of billions of dollars from what are currently harmful subsidies, in fact, in terms of price distortion and agricultural practices, into innovative practices that will be then nature positive, will help the farmers to get their production to the level that it should be, while at the same time preserving nature. So I think this is still one of the light that we've got in front of us, and one of the call that we make to actually, yes, let's innovate, and while we innovate, let's also really transform. That is, let's look at these harmful practices, including sometimes support to CO2 and carbon carbon technologies.
Sure.
And let's going away from them so that we create this more nature positive relation. I think that would be the call.
Thank you so much. So for our sort of final sum up question, I want to talk about policy. And obviously, you know, we've been talking about innovation and investment and the kinds of practices that are needed to support regenerative agriculture, but ultimately governments need to step up to the plate and support policies that will enable farmers and the private sector to do these things in a creative way. So I'm wondering, from all of your perspectives, has COP28 provided an opportunity to strengthen these partnerships and develop new ones that can then translate into policy? Agnes, do you want to go? Do you need the microphone? Thank you.
Maybe just addressing the partnership question, but also recognizing the role of policy. One of the things that comes out when you come to these meetings in COP28 is just how much information already exists, how much technologies already exist. It's amazing, just between all of us, how much we could start sharing and really harness. But the bottom line is, many of these things, I wish I was working with 7% smallholder farmers like in Brazil, but in our countries, we are working like 60% of the countries we are in are 60% smallholder farmers. So in some of these things, to move them forward, you actually need policies that do recognize that this ecosystem can't move forward unless there's a policy environment that enables action for the majority of the community, but also enables action for businesses that are trying to be in that landscape. Number two, the subsidy question that you're talking about impacts all of us. It doesn't matter where it is happening in the world. It's really it impacts all of us. And the issue is not whether farmers need subsidies or not. The issue is where those subsidies are and what impact they are having. So again, I mentioned low carbon livestock, then now low carbon rice beginning to happen in many places, and just being able to find those. But when they do happen, when we do find these technological opportunities, how do we turn them into policy so that it becomes a way of life and how we do business? So we already know that that's a low-hanging fruit that is in our midst. That, again, that's why I appreciate that we are now talking about scaling. When we do have the right technologies that can impact how we work as a community, as a people, we need to do that. We didn't know. This COP is so, and that's why we have COPs. It's so embedded into climate change and all that. Who knew about 20 years from backwards, who knew that we would be here talking about what we are talking about today? So we really need to be finding the things that need to move us forward so that we go back to, not to our way of life, it's probably not acceptable anymore, but to a new way of life that allows us to live better with our world. So policy, only policy can get us there because we need action at scale.
Agreed. Thank you so much for that. Qingfeng, I wonder what your thoughts on moving policy forward are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Multilateral Development Bank need to play a very important role to transform the policy change in the developing member countries. That is very clear. So now is the COP28 really provides the opportunity for this type of transformation, since the agricultural food system now is very clearly declared by the 140 countries. And we hope forest agricultural food system also being clearly stated in the federal document. In that way, the NDC will have agri-food system transformation clearly stated in each of the countries, the future carbon neutrality or this climate change is a plan. So from the MDB's perspective, we have the different way to enable the change. Number one is a policy-based lending. So since COP26, we already have the number of this type of the policy-based lending for Philippines, Bangladesh, Mongolia to enable the change for the climate action. Now we need to incorporate agri-food system into this space. In the past, we very much focus on energy transition. Now agricultural food system transformation need to be on top of it because it's much harder and they need to be scaled up. The second is a sort of branded finance. We need to think about the difference between the agri-food system transformation and energy transition. Right. Energy transition, we just focus on those bigger player, bigger energy company, and we can make achieve our purpose.
Right.
But for the agri-food systems services, we need to talk to farmers, each small farmers, because you look at if a small farmers really contribute, produce 30% of the agri-food in the world, but really the carbon finance probably only 1% to really benefit the small farmers. So this is a big gap. How are we going to change? That is a very critical thing. So we need to have the platform. We need to have brand financing enable this change.
I love the point about farmer-centric policy approaches. That's really phenomenal. Mauricio, what are your thoughts from the private sector on the kind of policy changes that are needed?
Well, so first of all, I think this type of sessions like the COP28, just coming back to your initial point, I think they help, they facilitate on that. So they bring light, you are in the same place and you share. So I personally learned a lot, many things that we've been kind of discussing and materialize. I think we engage and you share much more. So do I see advancement on some of these? Yes. The speed still worries me, to be very fair. Right. So I think there's been advancement for sure, but still, and when I say speed, not pointing fingers, it's not, I think from both private and government sectors. So I think the level of conversation, as it was very well pointed out, it's much better. I think you're nailing what is needed. Actions, I think are slower than anticipated. So when I reflect back to what I've seen here during these days is, first, how can we make that faster? What are the things that we as an organization need to tackle and need to engage even further and get even more conversations with the government? So that's one point. And the second one, it brought us a little bit of a sense of urgency and responsibility because I think it was said in the panel before, 2 years from now, we're going to have the COP30 in Brazil. And I think there is a lot of things that we as a group can actually incentivize and make sure that we have a very good alignment until getting there. It's going to be not going to be perfect for sure, but I see a lot of improvement points so that we can get some of these infrastructure needs and so on in place until we get there in 2 years.
Absolutely. Secretary Vilsack said that COP30 will be here sooner than we think, so we need to keep on this topic of urgency. Renato, what kinds of policy instruments would help the farmers and ranchers you work with in Brazil, be more sustainable, practice regenerative agriculture?
There are so many answers to that question, but I'd like to choose one. For me, the most important policy that we should work on is regarding data-driving policies. So we should work with MRV. All the time, in any kind of panel that I'm here or outside of here, we are discussing about the impact of food system on climate change. We have to be discussing and bringing data to discuss that food system is vulnerable and we need to defend food system. So why it's so hard? Because we don't have data. Everything, we know the narrative, we know why food system has been attacked, but we don't have data. So we should work on this, and the public policies should be data-driven. So I agree totally with Dr. Agnes. I want you to know that I love your country. We should talk more. But the last point that I would like to say regarding food system, we always say food system transformation everywhere. We have to take care about it. Because when we talk about food, we are not only talking about feeding. We are talking about our culture. We are talking about our lives. You like the food that your mother does to you, your grandmother. It's part of what you are. It's not only food system transformation. We are giving up all our culture. So we need to be very careful when we talk about food system transformation. Nobody sits around a few sources and talk about their lives, but we do it sitting on a table and with a very nice food, and we talk about our lives, our feelings. So food is connect people, and we cannot lose this. So yes, we should invest on food system, and we should invest on our narrative using data-driven policies, but we cannot forget, we cannot compare food system with any kind of other sector.
So first, I won't be long because, as you said, food is very personal and it's already past lunchtime, and I'm certain everybody's very hungry. But and I totally agree with you that it is a different kind of change that we're discussing. It is very personal, and it's linked to livelihoods, and it's linked to life on Earth, definitely. So it makes it very, very different. But policy, I mean, from our perspective, I mean, science-based policy. This is what we need. We need the data. We need the evidence. We need the discussion around the best solutions. And this is what we try to bring. There's I think policies around land-based management will be very important as well as we go forward. Policies around the type of crops that we promote in our diets and so on will be very important, but all backed by science and all backed with the aim to make our planet and our people more prosperous and more beautiful to live in. So this is with this that I will conclude.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bruno. What a wonderful way to conclude this session. I want to thank the Business Council for International Understanding, the Eco Pavilion, and all of you for joining us. Thank you so much. Big round of applause.